prominent economist, author, and member of the Economic Advisory Council of the Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. So welcome to Republic.
Pleasure to meet you.
So we're talking at a time when India's GDP numbers are somewhat looking promising and steady, with the RBI giving a forecast of 7.2% for FY25. What is your take?
So, it's quite clear that we are now the fastest growing economy in the world and have been for some time. Indications are that momentum has continued into this year. Something in the range of 7%, give or take a little bit on either side, is probably what we will get. That is our assessment right now. That is also the assessment of the IMF and other agencies. So, yes, the RBI assessment is broadly in line with what we also think.
So, there is a concern that employment could be one of the, reasons for worry for the government of India. But being an emerging economy and being, tech-driven with a demographic dividend on its side, what do you think are the growth drivers for India currently when it comes to?
So, there are many growth drivers for India. And obviously, the services sector has been a particular strong sector for us. We have been investing in industrialization. Not all of it has been evenly successful, but certainly areas like electronics are clearly doing well. You all know about the story of Apple and how it's converting India to one of its hubs. But there are other areas as well, pharmaceuticals and others, where we can clearly see that there is momentum in the industrialization as well. But I think if you're taking a broader perspective, in the end, we have to do two things. One is we have to move up the value chain in all the new areas that are emerging, particularly artificial intelligence or drones or whatever it is. This requires us to invest into research and development at our end. As we have become a larger economy and we have begun to, we are on our way to becoming the world's third largest economy. We can't do this just by being a service center or back end of some other economy. We are reaching the scale where we have to create our own products, we have to create our own intellectual property. All of this requires that we are able to do our own patents. So all of this needs that we invest in our own R&D, our own products, our own brand. So I think we are now crossing that threshold. And I think this is the area that we need to begin to do. And so you can see that whether we are creating the National Research Foundation or many other things, these are the areas where we really need to work on. Similarly, there are other new areas of industrialization that we have identified, one being all things relating to being maritime. Whether it's building new ports, we're building one in Vadhavan. We are also looking at shipbuilding. So there's a whole bunch of things that we are now trying to push as a way of generating growth. And of course, there are issues about where these things needs to be done, and we can discuss in the rest of the interview my particular interest in reviving Eastern India.
Right. Talking about Eastern India, sir, you recently brought out a paper where you have done a deep study of the entire Indian's landscape, all the states from 60s till the current year. And I was going through it and I found some shocking revelations when it comes to Eastern India. What, according to you, has paralyzed growth in that segment, especially Bengal?
So Eastern India is very, very obviously doing worse than the rest of the country. So if you look at the paper, there are obviously high growth areas in southern India, for example, Telangana and Karnataka. There are high growth zones in western India like Gujarat. There are even high growth areas in northern India like Haryana and Delhi. But Eastern India is quite unique in having performed much below par. And here, since 1960s till now, the two states that have done particularly badly are Bihar and West Bengal. So West Bengal, people forget, even despite partition and all the confusion that happened around partition, losing its hinterland and so on, West Bengal, even in 1960-61, was the third largest economy in the country. It was still one of the largest industrial hubs. The average Bengali had a per capita income that was 28% higher than that of the rest of the country, and so on. And since then, West Bengal has continuously lost its share in the Indian economy. So, in 1960-61, it was 10.6% of the Indian economy. Today, it is barely 5.5%.
But nothing has changed. I mean, the strategic location of the state, its geographical and natural endowments, it has the resources. Then why?
So obviously, policies matter, and I may add that some of the surrounding states also have done poorly. I mean, Bihar also has done quite poorly through these 6-7 decades. So initially there were certain things that central government policies that like freight equalization, for example, which weighed down on Eastern India. And I think Eastern India was unfairly treated in the 1960s and 70s, even into the 80s, by freight equalization and those kinds of policies. But we have to remember those were removed in 1993.
Yeah.
So we can't blame subsequent decline also of Bihar and Bengal on freight equalization. So we have to take the obvious thing into account, which is that there were poor state level policies, especially in Bengal, where during the communist era, policies chased away the business, almost deliberately did so, and has subsequently never quite invited risk-taking, entrepreneurship, and so on back. And as a result of that, and then of course, once that begins to break down, the economic engine, other things begin to break down. The cultural hub began to dissolve, and now we have a law and order situation. The same thing happened in Bihar. So, Bihar was never an industrial hub, but it was still the 5th largest economy based just on agriculture in the 1960-61 period. And since then, it has been in continuous decline. So today, an average Bihari just earns 33% of the national average in per capita income. This is, of course, excluding remittances, so maybe this is exaggerating it a bit, but still 33% is the largest deviation away from the national average. And this deterioration particularly happened in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, till about 2010 or so, where it has stabilized at that low equilibrium. Again, we know what happened. I mean, that entire phase of Gunda Raj, law and order matters, being friendly to business and economic activity matters. And, when you're taking these long periods of time, these numbers don't lie.
Correct. But very close to Bengal, at least right at the top, is Sikkim, throwing up some very interesting and huge numbers with no industry or anything else whatsoever. But what is it driving? What's driving it?
So actually, there are two small states that do particularly well in this. One is Sikkim and the other is Goa. And in both cases, it shows that small states can take up niches like tourism and do spectacularly well. So both Sikkim and Goa are big into tourism. Very often, economists tend not to take tourism seriously. They'd like in some industry or some software or some heavy-looking thing. But in fact, tourism and related things like breweries and so on have done spectacularly well. Both of these states have significant education establishments. Sikkim has Manipal and other things that they have invested in. Goa also has invested in a whole bunch of institutes and so on and so forth. So, they have gotten into the fun industries and they have done well. So, you don't have to always invest in very heavy, drudgery-like industries to do well. Entertainment, tourism, these things can be just as good.
Correct. Many South Asian countries are completely based on tourism for that matter.
Thailand does very well with Indian tourists. So, the point is, anything and everything can work. The point, it requires you to be friendly to that industry and to be, have a broader mind about how to generate wealth. All these narrow-minded, social justice and redistribution type of thinking, in the end doesn't help, because those people who can generate innovation and entrepreneurship simply drift away.
Flexibility is a huge thing. And I see that sort of flexibility in Gujarat, which is continuing to drive such huge wealth into the state, and also Maharashtra, for obvious reasons, being a financial capital of India. But Gujarat has never said no to industry, and the messaging has always been.
This is more recent phenomena than you think. So even that's also true for the South, by the way. So let's look at these two high growth areas, West and South. In 1960, Bombay state included both Gujarat and Maharashtra. They separated, and for a period of time, Maharashtra actually did better than Gujarat. So Gujarat began to outperform Maharashtra relatively recently, since about 2000, 2001. Basically coinciding with the time that Prime Minister Modi took over at that time as Chief Minister. And then you can clearly see the improved performance in Gujarat. And now Gujarat has a per capita income that is significantly higher than that of Maharashtra. Maharashtra is also above national average, but Gujarat is even higher. And much of this outperformance has happened really in the last 25 odd years. So, and that is very clear from the data. Similarly, if you look at South India, on average, Southern India was slightly poorer than the rest of India till as recently as the 90s. And then they just took off. And here also the real performer is Telangana and Karnataka.
Yeah.
And again, being friendly to industry, having a dynamic urban hub, all of these things matter. So Telangana and Andhra were again same state, and then you see that after separation, Telangana is the one that has been the real. I mean, Andhra hasn't done terribly badly, but Telangana is clearly the better performing part of the country. So Andhra has done okay. But here again, you can see two states, nothing very different between them, same language, same everything. And one state just takes off because it is more industry and friendly. It is got put in the urban amenities and so on, and really drives growth. So same thing happens with Gujarat. It becomes much more friendly. It's also interesting the contrast between the two high performance states. Gujarat uses a combination of 4 urban hubs to grow. So you have Ahmedabad, you have Rajkot, you've got Vadodara, and you've got Surat. Whereas Telangana grows just on one really big hub, which is Hyderabad. And then there's Karnataka, again, one really big hub, which is Bangalore. So there are different models, but what is common between them is being friendly to entrepreneurship, risk-taking, having, dynamic urban hubs. All of this drives growth.
Let's also talk about Punjab, very close to Haryana geographically, having similar advantages, and has had the luxury of a robust agricultural economy. But what has tanked? I mean, why has the economy completely tanked?
So yes, the contrast between Punjab and Haryana is quite interesting because again, we're part of the same state. So start off with a similar situation. They both benefit from the Green Revolution phase, but Punjab does much, much better. So by 1970-71, the average Punjabi is of any major state. It is the richest state in India. And Punjabis are on average much richer than the average Haryanavi. And then from the 80s, Punjab basically then flattens out. Maybe because of the Khalistan movement and again, law and order matters a lot. Maybe that chased away industry. But even in the 90s, when things settled down again, Punjab never got its mojo back. Whereas Haryana kept going. And today, Haryana's per capita income is 70% higher than that of the average Indian. Whereas Punjab is just a little bit above the average Indian. Basically, it's at average. So you can imagine there is a 65% difference in per capita income between Haryana and Punjab. Whereas Haryana till the 90s was in fact the poor cousin. And again, the success of Gurgaon is an important part of this, but it's not the only part. I mean, generally speaking, Haryana has done much, much better.
Right. Going by your numbers, we have always considered Mumbai as the Maharashtra, as a financial capital. But Delhi's numbers are stunning. I mean, do we still give Bombay that credit? Or
so here you have to be a little careful because you can't compare per capita income of a state with that of a city. I mean, if you look, because here I have not looked at Mumbai versus Delhi, but I have looked at Maharashtra versus Delhi. So it is a little bit skewed in the sense that clearly Delhi comes up having a per capita income which is 2.5 times the national average. That would be true of many urban hubs. May even be true of Mumbai. We don't have good data on this, and that is a study for another time. But yes, in general, Delhi NCR has actually for the last 30 years outperformed Mumbai. Many reasons for this, but basically Delhi NCR has now spread into Noida, there was into Gurgaon. It's now a massive economic behemoth. In fact, so much so that it may be the reason that even UP, whose share of GDP declined for many, many decades along with Bihar and others, but in recent years, it has begun to rise. So one of the factors is obviously probably Noida. But Maharashtra as a whole is a much more mixed bag in the sense that it is still the largest single state in terms of share of GDP, but its share is now stagnated. And even Mumbai, where we don't have the data here, my own sense is that the data in the very recent past will probably show improvement, but earlier than that it was probably flat or even declining vis-a-vis Delhi. But my own sense is that a lot of this gets driven by the quality of urban infrastructure you put in. The amazing amount of quality infrastructure that's now going into Mumbai will transform the city. The city will be unrecognizable in the next couple of years. I mean, whether it's the coastal road will open up, the new metro system will open up, the new airport, all of this will take Mumbai a notch up. Delhi now needs to match up. I mean, Delhi has already seen the metro build out over the last few years. Of course, we will also get an airport and all that. But I think Delhi state will find that a lot of the action has moved out of Delhi state into Gurgaon or into Noida. And in fact, cities like Gurgaon now have a life of their own. And you can't just call it a satellite city of Delhi. It has its own universe. And I have a sense that if once Jewar airport opens up, Noida will be a life in its own right. You don't have to come to Delhi to catch a flight also. So I think Delhi state now needs to rethink itself and reinvent itself, because its sister towns, which were poor cousins earlier, will probably at some point go past it. That's where the new investments are coming. That's where increasingly the middle class of the Delhi NCR area is not in Delhi state, but in Noida or Gurgaon, or even now maybe even in Meerut, who knows, because now we have a direct link. So that entire area is getting completely gentrified.
As an economist, does it bother you that a lot of tier 2, tier 3 population continues to come to the metropolis for employment? And is it sustainable, the way the city is working?
We don't want everybody to turn up in Delhi, Bombay, and or even Bangalore for the matter. The amount of stress it causes on those cities, even at some point begin threatening the dynamics of that city. I mean, Bangalore being continuously, gridlocked by traffic jams. Now you can keep building more, infrastructure, but there is a limit to how much you can do in one area, and anyway, it causes imbalance. So I think we do need to look at second-tier cities and begin investing in them. Gujarat provides a very good model of somewhat more dispersed growth. As I told you, there are 4 separate hubs of growth. Maybe some of the more successful states need to begin thinking about having other hubs becoming kind of growth engines. And so maybe, Maharashtra already has another one in Pune, but it's now almost become the same city. And maybe Nagpur need to be thought about, and maybe similarly, Karnataka needs to think of some other hub, I don't know, Mangalore or some other place as a secondary hub, and so on. So yes, and of course there are parts of the country where no hubs exists. And so Eastern India again, you come to Eastern India has a situation where it has one very large city, which is Kolkata. Kolkata itself has lost its dynamism. Patna and Ranchi don't have the scale. And Bhubaneswar, although it's dramatically improved from where it used to be, and as a state it has now, relative to its past, it has done quite well. So in terms of it is, the average Odia has a per capita income slightly above that of the average Bengali, which would have been unthinkable a generation ago. But still, Bhubaneswar has not got the kind of dynamism you get, say, out of Hyderabad or one of the other high growth cities. So I think Eastern India is an area where you really need to create other engines, including a large engine, not just small engine, and you need to create a large engine. Kolkata really needs to be revived as an engine of growth. It's not just for Bengal, but for the entire region to get it going. I mean, look at what Delhi does for the entire area. All the way through to Jaipur is driven by Delhi NCR's economic heft.
Right. One interesting state which I found from this list was Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, neither have they really grown, nor have they really, done badly, but they've been sort of stable.
Well, it depends what you mean. I mean, if you go back to the 1960s, all through to around 1990, its per capita income was not far away from the national average. But I think the events of the late 80s and 90s and all the troubles you had there since then meant that it really did fall behind significantly till in the last decade or so, where it has stabilized. So I wouldn't say that it hasn't, it's been a particular success or even been stable. In fact, it has fallen behind. But yes, in the very recent time scale, it has flattened out. Now, the impact of whether 370 helps or not, we'll see. That is too early to tell. But yes, it is no longer declining. That's the best we can say.
During the budget, we saw the finance minister showing a lot of concern for employment with all the internship schemes, etc. Skill development, because India is such a young country, do you think it's a concern, or are we doing enough, and where all do we need to focus on it?
So I think there are many issues here. You see, one of the big issues is that India actually is generating jobs. And if you talk to companies, they will tell you that we can't hire fast enough, but we can't find the right kind of skills. So, for example, there is the famous case of Larsen & Toubro. It says wants 20,000 engineers and skilled workers, it can't find them. And that is true for many, many companies. And at the other end, there are people complaining that they don't have jobs. So there are two parts to it. One is a geographical problem, which is part of what we had discussed. There we have people in Eastern India, like in Bihar, who want jobs, and there are actually shortages in Tamil Nadu or some of the southern states, or even in Gujarat, where they're actually importing people. So one part of it is geographical, and so solving it is to get jobs going in Eastern India is a very important part of it. I keep telling people that there is no such thing as a poor person. There is such a thing as a poor place, because if you take two people with identical skills, let's say as a plumber in somewhere in Bihar, and one of those guys migrates to Dubai and one of them stays there. After a few years, skills will not matter. One of them will earn a lot more than the other. So making a place conducive to job creation creates its own dynamic to create skills, etc. So I do not believe that solving the skilling problem is that, we create lots of universities, people will get skilled, then after that they will get jobs, and so on and so forth. China did not solve it like this. China put people onto the shop floor, and that's where they learn. So I am of the belief that yes, there are certain skills that maybe you need to learn in universities, and yes, there is some benefit from teaching people in the formal way. But a very large part of learning is by doing. And that's why getting people onto the shop floor is the single most important thing. That is the context in which this apprenticeship scheme needs to be thought of. Simply getting people onto the shop floor is a very large part of the training. You see, this business that, you have to first get them a PhD before they can be employed is the wrong way to think about it.
Coming about how to think, you just said that some states are doing well because they're nimble. So do you have a prescription for many states which are sort of lagging? I mean, for say Bengal or
the most
Punjab.
Thing, what are we nimble about?
Mm.
You see, even when states begin thinking that okay, we need to invite people to do business, etc., there is this closed idea that this is the industry. There will be some committee of bureaucrats who will decide that this is the industry we will target, and then we will build infrastructure. We will create some training institute to train people to do all of this. This is not how it works. The way it works is yes, you need basic infrastructure, but after that you just have to be open to new things that are happening, to risk taking. After all, when Bangalore got going, it started out actually because of Y2K.
Well,
In the 90s, what was the thing that drove? Who could have predicted Y2K? Yeah, and it turned out to be a non-issue, but it created Bangalore software industry. Yeah. So the thing that I'm saying is, don't get fussed about this specific activity. Just be conducive to risk-taking entrepreneurship. It will take it in all kinds of different directions. Who knows where it will go? And so that is something that unfortunately Kolkata, which is, the city of my birth and yours as well, and, lost it somewhere. We forgot that risk-taking is what does it. It's not the wisdom of some wise people sitting in some government committee which knows where the world will go. Nobody has any idea. But if you create a culture, an ecosystem of risk-taking, of innovation, then that innovation leads to all kinds of things. Business innovation, cultural innovation, scientific innovation. And that is really what, drives this whole phenomenon.
So are you witness to a transformation of India from a service-based economy to an entrepreneurial economy?
Exactly. I think that is the key. I mean, I don't think there is some sort of trade-off between services to entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs can be working in services or any other industry. That's not the point I'm making. I think the real thing that I'm arguing for is we've made some progress in the last 30 years by simply removing the massive constraints of licenses, permits, then poor infrastructure and red tape. Very significantly we have solved it. Not all of it, significantly solved it. And we have generated some amount of growth as a result. But as we become a world power in our own right, as I said, in the next few years we will be the world's third largest economy. We now need to also realize that we need to be in the big league ourselves. Where are the Indian products? Where are the Indian brands? Where are the large Indian R&D budgets in the private sector? I mean, the government can do it, but in the end, large R&D budgets are actually in the US or many other places comes from the private sector. Some of it comes from the government, but largely comes from the private sector. That's where the innovation is. And that has to be really where the change has to be. I mean, Indian entrepreneurs and Indian companies, need to have some ambition.
And before we conclude, Mr. Sanyal, so talking about the very interesting insights that you have found through your study, what are the 2 or 3 things that most states right now have to address to scale up and to expand from where they are?
So obviously the successful states need to move up the value chain. We need to get out of this mindset that you have to protect some industry. You're already successful. You have to move up the value chain. So states like, for example, I talked about Telangana and Bangalore. They need to up their game, get their cities to be, great places to live. And not just Bangalore, get other cities in that region to be great places to young people, entrepreneurs themselves, to base themselves. Get new industries from artificial intelligence to genetics or whatever other thing, robotics, whatever you think is new stuff, energy and all. Get industry to come there, and you have to move up the value chain. You cannot try and predict old industries, because very quickly the very fact that you have made progress, per capita income has risen, means that you become uncompetitive in those areas. You have to move up the value chain. So otherwise you have the Punjab problem that your per capita income goes up because of agriculture, but you never make the transition. So it's very, very important to keep climbing this. If you want to have the next round of growth, it cannot be by simply same engine. You have to keep moving up the value chain. So that is for the successful states. For the not so successful states, particularly those in Eastern India, they need to begin to get to the basics, which is, you need to attract business. You need to attract risk takers and entrepreneurs. And you really need to create an environment that's conducive. Well, the first step is simply the law and order has to be safe. In many of these states, the law and order is not up to speed. Then it has to have a culture that is welcoming of risk takers. And for far too long, my own home state of West Bengal has, thought of entrepreneurs as being not quite, doing something that is somehow suspicious. If that is your culture, then they will not come because they will, we feel unwelcome. Risk takers are welcomed everywhere else in the world. If you make them feel unwelcome, they'll go somewhere else. Why blame them? So there is a case here of just getting the basics right. In the successful states, those basics are already in place, so they can climb up the value chain. But in the lagging states, get the basics, get the basic infrastructure there. I mean, a state like Bihar, for example, per capita income is low enough that it can get into areas like textiles, right? Now you can't do that in Telangana anymore because the per capita income has become too high.
Great insights and a lot of food for thought from this paper. So thank you for talking to us, Sanyal. Thank you for your time.